One of the really helpful, spiritually fulfilling things about walking through Holy Week and spending every single day in prayer and worship in some capacity is we start to see a pattern. We see that the week begins with Palm Sunday and the celebration. And Monday, we're always looking at Jesus cleansing the temple. And then Tuesday, it's a little bit of his teachings. Then by Wednesday, we're looking at Judas. Thursday, it's Maundy, Thursday. Friday, it's Good Friday. Saturday, it's the Vigil until we get to Easter. And it's a steady climb down, but it's something every day that enriches the story. And if we just move from Palm Sunday to Easter, we move from Palm Sunday to Good Friday to Easter, we're missing out on all the stuff in the middle. Today is a fantastic opportunity to look at Jesus cleansing the temple. Quite frankly, it's one of my favorite stories. And you'll notice that every story, every gospel tells it slightly differently. So there's no flipping over tables in the Gospel of Luke, which is kind of one of my favorite parts. So we're going to take that metaphor of flipping tables and make that our kind of overarching perspective for the week of Holy Week. We started with Palm Sunday yesterday, looking at things, tipping it over, looking at it upside down, looking at new perspectives as we go forth this Holy Week. So the story that we're looking at today has Jesus going into the temple. Now we're talking the temple. We're not talking the huge temple grounds where all of this open air is. That was where people often did commerce. They met for meetings. That was open territory for everybody. And the courts got smaller and smaller as you got further in. And it was some of the inner courts that Jesus was talking about. As a man, he could go into these places where women couldn't necessarily go. And that's where he got mad, because in the Hebrew tradition that Jesus was part of, this was where God lived. The temple was incredibly special that way. It was a sacred space. And these people were turning it into something it wasn't supposed to be, a place of exploitation, a place of money changing, a place of dismissing pilgrims who had come. So Jesus had a lot to say about disrespecting the place of God, the place where people came to worship and to sit in quiet and to learn. So if you ever have anybody tell you, well, we can't do sales or teas or whatever in the church because of this particular story of Jesus flipping tables, kind of tell them it's not the outside, it's kind of the inside. So you want to make sure that the place that people consider most sacred is what Jesus is talking about, not the rest of it. So Jesus comes in, and it's hardly a story in Luke. He comes in and he decides to chase all these people out, and I have great fun imagining Jesus as a Hebrew man who would rarely run, but probably chasing them out, running after them a little bit, scaring them away. Jesus was not fooling around. The time was done. He was up. He knew where this week was going. He had already entered triumphantly the day before, where everybody was waiting with claims and requests that he be king. The stage was set. Jesus was the opposite. He flipped the narrative. He was not who the people were expecting. And through the week, we won't see a gentle, caring, loving, compassionate Jesus. He's there. Can look a little deep for it, and it's there. But this is a Jesus with a job and a focus. And this is a Jesus who came to give the last messages that people would receive, last messages that we're going to receive this Holy Week of how we're supposed to live. And then the gospel quickly takes us into the priests wanting to get rid of him because they recognize he is trouble. Now, to put this in perspective in Luke, Luke also has the story of Jesus as a 12 or 13-year-old boy sitting in this very same temple, surrounded by priests and Pharisees, probably some of these same men who now want to get rid of him. As a child, they were amazed by him and his sense of knowledge and his sense of godly wisdom. And they wanted to spend time with him. To the best of our knowledge, none of them tried to find his family. They just wanted to sit around and talk with him. And now, several years later, 20-ish years later, he's now being hunted by these folks. How do we get rid of them? We can't do anything overt because the people are for him. And suddenly it's not about God anymore. It's about politics. And this week is all about politics. So we see the story of the Pharisees trying to trick Jesus. Now remember, they saw him as 13. Some of them already know that it's not going to go well, but they're doing everything they can because their powers are limited. They can't do a whole lot. Trying to show him as false in front of the people. So the very first thing they do is they attacked his credibility. By whose authority are you here to speak? They didn't question his authority when he was 13. They were quite excited about his authority at 13, but they questioned it at 33. Whose authority? We often do that in the church, don't we? We often look at someone who's making us uncomfortable or someone who's got a message that we're either not familiar with or not quite sure about. Now, if it comes from someone who has a lot of degrees in theology like I have, or comes from someone with a collar, someone with authority already, then it's accepted. If it comes from someone who is outside of that realm, that really narrow box of people who have church background and theological background, it's under suspect. And then inside that box, there's all sorts of jockeying. Whose authority do you have? Well, I have this degree. Well, I have this position. Well, I have this experience. And there's always a jockeying. And we should learn something from how Jesus handled this. He moved to the side of it. This is one of the things that comes up with Jesus again and again and again. When the Pharisees and scribes want to challenge him, he doesn't take the bait. He sidesteps it and he says, who gave John the authority to baptize? Now, John was killed by Caesar Antipas. And he is a hot button for a lot of people there. Especially, remember, we're in Passover season. So there's a lot of people there who want to have their peaceful celebrations without any of this underground current that's going on. The Pharisees want that too. Jesus knows that's not going to be possible. So he pushes the button of anybody he could have picked. He picks John the Baptist, who is already a sore spot for the authorities in Jerusalem. Whose authority did John baptize with? I'm waiting. And you see the story, they argue back and forth. Well, we can't say he's from God because that gives him more authority. And we can't say he's human because then it undermines everything. The people are going to be really angry with whatever we answer. So we're going to have to just say something else altogether. And they say, we don't know. And Jesus says, well, then I guess you're not going to find out who gave me authority either. Jesus gave us a model of challenged. He wasn't there with earthly rules. He wasn't there with earthly expectations at this point in time. He was there on a mission to give something else. One of his big issues was how regimented the temple faith was. Remember, Jesus came as a social reformer, as a faith reformer. He did not come at any point to start a new religion. His followers did that. That was not Jesus' agenda. He came to give them new understandings of the faith they already had through Abraham and Moses. He wanted people to be more engaged, not this many levels of remove that the temple system had established at this point in time. If the priests and the Pharisees, who were supposed to be the most learned in the entire community, could be made to look foolish in front of the people by answering a question politically as opposed to faithfully, then it showed that they didn't really have any grounds to challenge Jesus' authority. They didn't have the authority themselves. They had secured positions. We do that in our churches. We don't listen to what the people are looking for. We secure our positions. So let's upend that a little bit. How about we cleanse, we turn over things, we look at things from a different perspective. That those who have authority are going to be told, you're going to have to wait. There's another authority speaking here. As we try to understand why Jesus was first annoyed and secondly wasn't going to take the bait. That he wanted something better for people. He wanted people to work for it, to have an understanding, to have an openness and appreciation that there's another way to be in a relationship with God. It doesn't have to be dictated to other people around us. There can be a direct link. We can upend the structure in that way. We do not have to concede to a system that might not fit us, a system that is so politically focused that they cannot answer, do not recognize when God is in their midst, when they weren't choosing to say, we don't know, or give some other excuse rather than just to sit with the greatest teacher the world has ever known. If you go from the scripture that we're looking at today and you continue reading through the next chapter, you will see that Jesus has lots of teaching moments, lots of opportunities to give the last listeners a chance to understand God's community here on earth, not somewhere up far above, but here on earth, before he would forever be removed physically from our earthly existence. Turn over the tables, see what you can find.